There have been a number of interesting diplomatic events here in this part of the world in recent days, with Seoul forging formal ties with Havana and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's sister Kim Yo-jong hinting at potential progress in ties between Pyongyang and Tokyo. So what are the prospects of tangible improvement in ties between Japan and North Korea? Are these prospects linked to South Korea's recent forging of diplomatic relations with Cuba? And how do these latest developments look to affect regional security tensions? Hope your work week is off to a good start. I'm Min Sunhee. We begin this week's editions of Issues and Insiders with a check on regional headlines that receive quite a bit of foreign media attention as well. For this, I have Andres Sanchez Braun here in the studio. Andres, welcome back.
Thank you for having us here.
I also have Chloe Borgnon with us. Chloe, it's good to see you again.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Right, Andres, North Korea celebrated the anniversary of the 82nd birth of the regime's second leader, Kim Jong-il, last Friday, I believe. Let's start with this particular event up north.
Yes, February 16th is one of the major holidays in North Korea. Gwangmyeongjol, the day of the bright star or the shining star, if you like. It is one of the country's, as I said, biggest celebrations. And I've actually personally attended a Gwangmyeongjol in Pyongyang myself. It's an event where you have firework displays, exhibitions of Kim Jong-il, which is this flower that a Japanese botanist created for late leader Kim Jong-il, who's the father of the current leader Kim Jong-un. There's dance events in the streets of Pyongyang, etc., etc. And this is pretty much what we saw being reported by North Korean media last Friday. Now, also, it was noted actually that for third year in a row, Kim Jong-un did not actually visit the Kumsusan Palace of the Sun, where the mummified remains of his father Kim Jong-il are kept. So this actually together, Kim Jong-un has actually not attended the Kumsusan Palace also in the past two birthdays of his grandfather Kim Il-sung, considered the founder of the country. That's actually the biggest holiday, Daeyangjol, the Day of the Sun. Some analysts point out, I mean, with upcoming Kim Il-sung's birthday coming on April 15th, we'll see if Kim Jong-un goes to Kumsusan Palace of the Sun. Probably not. There seems to be a trend here. Analysts like to think that maybe Kim Jong-un is trying to break away a little bit from his grandfather's and father's shadow in this sense, and maybe work a little bit more on his own cult of personality. But who knows? With North Korea, it's always difficult to tell.
Right, of course it is. Chloe, also last week, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's sister, Kim Yo-jong, shared her personal thoughts regarding the possibility of progress in ties between Pyongyang and Tokyo. What exactly did she say, and what are your thoughts regarding those prospects?
Yeah, so first of all, she made it in a statement, press statement that was shared by the KCNA, so the press agency from the North Korea. What she said was in response to Japanese Prime Minister expressing that in a recent speech, he said that he felt a strong need to improve the relationship between Tokyo and Pyongyang. And she answered, to quote her, that there will be no reason not to appreciate his recent speech as a positive one. So here she's hinting on the fact that, according to her, there is a way that the relationship between Tokyo and Pyongyang could get better and could improve. And she also made an invitation to the Prime Minister to go to North Korea. She said that the day of the Prime Minister's Pyongyang visit might come. So my thoughts are that, yeah, there is an invitation here to develop those ties. There are still some obstacles that have to be overcome. One of the first things is she seemed unsure of the intention of the prime ministers, and because there are two big diplomatic issues here between North Korea and Japan, and she's hitting on it 3 times directly in her very short statements, due to diplomatic issues or the question of the abductees and also the stance of Japan on North Korea missile and nuclear program. Also, there's another thing is it seems that there was no real will from the Pyongyang regime to open up to Japan, because she is saying herself, I think our state leadership still has no idea of repairing the DPRK-Japan relations and has no interest in contact. And she's saying that in a statement. So that could show that Pyongyang is not really willing to do the first step on this point. And also, Japan, from its side, still have a quite stern position, even after the statements on the 17th. South Korea, the United States, and Japan have been, urging North Korea to take steps for humanitarian measures. And on the next day, the top diplomats of the Group of Seven, which Japan is part of, have been condemning North Korea's arm transfer to Russia. So it shows that Japan still, on the diplomatic side, is being quite stern and harsh on North Korea.
Right. So staying with what Chloe has just said, Andres, Japan, for its part, has also spoken about the importance of addressing the issue of past abductions by North Korean agents of Japanese nationals. I believe those took place in the 1970s and the 80s. Could you tell us a bit more about these past abductions, and also what are your thoughts regarding a possible resolution between Pyongyang and Tokyo regarding this particular issue?
Yes, the so-called Lachi Mondai, as they call it in Japanese, the abduction issue is basically the North Korean regime on a plan apparently crafted or masterminded by Kim Jong-il, who we were talking about just briefly now. Basically, the regime kidnapped people, mostly in the 70s and 80s, with the idea of bringing them to North Korea for them to teach Japanese to North Korean operatives, but not only Japanese, actually to teach them how to behave like Japanese people, how to behave in countries like Japan. Because the idea here was to help these North Korean operatives with, they would be able to travel around the world on fake Japanese passports, go to Japan, for example, and most importantly, come into South Korea with fake Japanese passports. Now, this is all part of a big scheme of kidnapping foreigners. I think it's important to remember that North Korea has kidnapped many South Koreans, and that many are still believed to be alive in the north and still retained. There's around 500 of them were kidnapped since the end of the Korean War. Now, this Lachi Mondai is effectively the most important thorny issue between the two countries, and it's the largest obstacle that basically avoids the two countries having diplomatic ties. Japan says that recognizes officially 17 people having been abducted by North Korea, where North Korea says that it's only 13. During this 2002 summit between Kim Jong-il and Koizumi Junichiro, Japan apparently or allegedly threatened to freeze some aid, and in exchange, North Korea strangely recognized that it had kidnapped 13 people. Now, of those 13 people, 5 were returned, but 8 of them, according to the North Korean regime, passed away. Now, of course, the reasons given were like sudden heart attacks at a young age, traffic accidents when back in the day there was barely any traffic in North Korea, carbon monoxide inhalation, all sorts of strange death causes. Then death certificates were apparently forged, the ones handed by the North Korean regime. And then when Japanese families requested, for example, samples of remains of these people, the North Korean regime said that because of the monsoon rains, they had washed the graves where these people had been buried, etc., etc. There seems to be no will on the North Korean side to return, if these people are actually alive, to return them probably because they've had access to something sensitive. But I think it's pretty clear that North Korea, unfortunately, has no interest in returning these people. There was, a decade ago, a committee formed by North Korea, again, to reinvestigate the abduction issues. But then again, the response was like, look, you know what, we didn't find anything. The issue is settled. So Kim Yo-jong actually pointed it the other day, said the abduction issues, the issue is settled, while Tokyo responded like, you know, for us, it's not settled. So I think conversations or trips taking place are highly unlikely right now. In the future, if Japan chooses to set aside the abduction issue and proceed with conversations and then try to address that in the future, maybe that could work to get conversations kick-started. But as of now, I think it's very, very unlikely.
Right. And in the meantime, though, Chloe, observers believe that Kim Yo-jong's recent remarks about potential progress with ties with neighboring Japan come in response to South Korea's forging of formal ties with Cuba. Do you agree?
Yeah, I would say that the timing of her answer that correspond to this, because that would be the intent of this olive branch sent to Japan. The announcement of the diplomatic ties between the Republic of Korea and Cuba has been done on Wednesday, so one day before she issued her statement. Also, that could be a response from what could be a surprise for Pyongyang, because Cuba has been considered as the North Koreans' brother state, because they've been the two socialist states, and in the past, Cuba has been siding up and staying with North Korea, even when the country was, you know, under condemnation because of its missile and nuclear program. So that could be this point. And also, it has been said by some officials from the South that it was done by the South Korea to show who has the upper end. So that could also be a bit of a reaction from Pyongyang. Still, it would be quite unbalanced, even if the diplomatic ties with Japan were to be set up again, because Japan will stay a very strong ally to South Korea through at least the US, the Japanese and Korean alliance. And the other thing is also that even without diplomatic ties, the Republic of Korea and Cuba are sharing more and more ties anyway. So with the Hallyu wave, that's been having a strong impact on Cuba. And also the South Korean Foreign Ministry said that before COVID-19 pandemics, at least 14,000 Koreans were visiting Cuba every year. So the ties are already making like contacts.
Right, it was quite active on the economic and cultural fronts. And that being said, Andres, and simply speaking within your capacity as a foreign journalist, does Korea's diplomatic engagement with Cuba look to affect regional security dynamics?
Well, I'm not really sure it could have an impact. And I think mainly because the reason Cuba and North Korea Cuba and North Korea's relationship, in this sense, was mostly political and never too strategic. I mean, the reason is both countries are geographically very far away from each other, and they were impoverished countries, also, you know, affected by sanctions, et cetera, et cetera. So, to be honest, I don't think it really does deal a strong blow. It's more symbolic than anything. But I do think that the timing, as Chloe pointed out, of announcing this possible, you know, diplomatic reunion with Japan was chosen probably because of this announcement. The Yoon Suk-yeol government tried to take it very discreetly, apparently, and most probably in order not to anger North Korea. But the truth is that we actually haven't seen any direct reaction from Pyongyang. They haven't mentioned this at all. And also, this comes at a time when North Korea apparently is trying to restructure its diplomatic strategies. It's been shutting down many embassies. It's been cozying up a lot with Russia and little else lately. So, to be honest, if there's any any tensions right now in the region, it stems because of the regional situation per se, not because of this new development in South Korea and Cuba having forging ties finally, which actually personally makes me very happy because I'm the grandchild of a Cuban person. So it actually makes me very happy that both countries finally have diplomatic ties. So.
Right, I see. Thank you for sharing. Didn't know about that. Andres, staying with regional security then, quite a number of observers have ruled out the possibility of an all-out war in the Korean Peninsula, but they have highlighted the possibility of sporadic hostile encounters at sea or near borders. How do you respond?
Well, I do agree with their take on this. I think if we're going to see sporadical, let's say, call it maybe confrontation or skirmishes, it's most probably going to take part in border areas, and mostly, I believe, the Western Sea maritime border, the so-called Northern Limit Line. Mainly because this 2018 military agreement North Korea announced that it would not no longer respect the agreement, and of course this agreement dealt with a lot of things going on in border regions. It was basically designed to reduce tension in these areas. And among other things, it forbid both armies from, for example, conducting artillery drills in close proximity to the NLL, to the Northern Limit Line. And what we've seen is that North Korea, at the start of the year, once it announced that it would not respect this treaty anymore, it actually conducted an artillery drill dangerously close to Yeonpyeong and Baekneung Islands. So if we're going to see something happening, we have to put all our attention in these border areas, I believe. Yes.
Right, we really do. Well, in the meantime then, Chloe, we have a few minutes left, so we're going to focus a bit on domestic issues here in South Korea. I believe you recently covered Seoul's adoption of delivery robots. Could you tell us a bit about your coverage?
Yeah, sure. So I did a video part on this. I followed one of the first company that got the right to operate the robots autonomously for the delivery in Seoul. So there were two companies that got this right on the 1st of February. And what interested me was the fact that the laws are being changed slowly to accommodate the robots market and to help them better developed. So for example, they were explaining to me that there is 3 laws that were a bit of an obstacle. So first one, that's the one that we spoke a lot about in November, is a robot a pedestrian or a car? Does it have to be on sideways or does it have to be on the road? So it was decided that it would be on sideways. Another rule was that in the law was said that the delivery was to be made by a human. So it's been changed so that robots can deliver you your food or any products. And the last thing was that the robots, they were driving through a camera, so they had to make sure that data and privacy of people that the robots will cross around were well protected. And that's something that interested me because robots are developing more and more here in Korea. You can see them making your coffee, so now we are going to meet them in the streets, and even in the airport. That was one of my first encounter in Incheon airports with the robots. And compared to France, it's really, in France we don't see robots anywhere. So robots in restaurants are still making the headlines because it's quite unusual sight. So that's what I was interested in this report, and that's really one of the big point of South Korea, is that robots are getting here.
Could you tell us a bit about the response from the public in France with regard to your report about these delivery robots here in South Korea?
Yeah, well, I think France is interested in robots. French people find them interesting, and they're slowly trying to understand that you can get them in everyday life, and that they're not just, kind of companions, and that you can get service robots that can be useful, like this delivery one, and not just optional, fun little things, because that's mostly what we think about for the moment in France.
Right, so laws have been changed to make sure that these delivery robots are able to use pedestrian passings than roads, I see. On a more concerning note, Andres, we have been told about Korea's first AI forgery case, and it's receiving quite a bit of foreign media attention as well. Could you tell us about this?
Yes, this case revolved around a man who actually got arrested because of alleged possession and use of drugs. And then the prosecutor's office received a series of documents that were intended to, help him get bail in this case. And the prosecutor's office found one of these documents a little strange. It was a document apparently signed by a public officer from the city of Goyang in the outskirts of Seoul that said that this person who was arrested for drug use in the past had worked at a local youth support program for the city of Goyang. But then the prosecutor's office found something a little strange about the document. They realized that this public official didn't really talk in particular of any particular activities in this program, didn't really seem to know the program very well, and that they felt that the writing was a little off. They felt like one of the prosecutors said, like, it felt like it had been maybe written in another language and then run through a translator. So, they investigated, and they finally found out that this person who had been arrested had told a friend, use this public official's name. I will forge his signature or whatever, but please use ChatGPT to make a letter saying that I worked on this youth support program. And well, it looks like the prosecutor's office probably won't have to deal with this for the last time. They're probably going to have to use some extra resources to try and detect future forgeries.
Right, which is why lawmakers are talking about the importance, well, pundits are talking about the importance of having related regulations in place then. All right, well, that's all the time we have for this edition. Andres, as always, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having us here.
Chloe, thank you so much for your insights.
Thank you, it was a pleasure.
Right, well, that ends this edition of Issues and Insiders. Thank you for watching. See you same time tomorrow. That is Tuesday.